Welcome back to another Shifting Schools podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Udick, and today we continue our summer-long mini-series all about the power of play. Let's start with a question for you. When was the last time you truly embraced the idea of risky play? How about your children? Now, today, we're thrilled to have Jackie Mader join us. Jackie covers early childhood education and writes the Early Ed newsletter for the Hechinger Report. Over her 10 years at Hechinger, she has covered diverse topics such as teacher preparation, special education, and rural schools. Before her journalism career, she worked as a special education teacher and trained new teachers. Her impact work has been featured in the New York Times, The Atlantic, USA Today, Time, and NBC News, earning her several prestigious awards, including the Sigma Delta Chi Award for the Society of Professional Journalists and the Nellie Bay Award for the New York Press Club. In today's episode, Jackie will debunk a common myth about play, emphasizing its critical role beyond preschool years. We'll explore how play continues to be essential in elementary and middle school, challenging the misconceptions that it loses value as children grow older. Additionally, we'll discuss practical tips for parents on incorporated guided play into everyday activities, making playtime both meaningful and manageable. Before we jump into the interview, we'd like to remind you to check out our free resources at Shifting Schools, as well as courses you can take around AI integration as we prepare for the coming school year. Check all this out at shifting.com. This week, we're highlighting our course on the foundations of AI literacy, available for purchase over on our website. Don't miss out on this valuable asynchronous pathway to enhance your teaching strategies this coming year. Now, before we get to Jackie, here is a quick word from today's show sponsors.
Discover the power of acknowledgement with Libra. In a world where every staff member's dedication shapes the future, recognizing their efforts becomes our mission. Libra transforms your school into a place where achievements, big and small, are celebrated daily, creating a ripple effect of motivation and pride. Join the recognition revolution with Libra, where every achievement is a cause for celebration. For more information and a free demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com today.
Librarians, meet MacEnvision, the future of library management. With a student-centered design, MacEnvision's intuitive interface and seamless navigation ensures that your students find the information they need quickly and effortlessly. Discover how MacEnvision can transform your school at macen.com/MacEnvision. And with that, here is Jackie Mader talking about the power of guided play for educators and parents alike. All right, welcome back to the Shifting Schools podcast. So excited to have Jackie here with me today. Jackie covers early childhood education, is a writer for the Early Ed newsletter. Jackie, thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast today as we continue with our summer mini-series all about the power of play. I want to jump right in with our first question. What is one myth about play that you seek to correct through the work that you do?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think as we've been reporting on play at the Hechinger Report, something that we keep coming across is this idea that play is not as important once you get out of preschool and pre-K. So I would say through these articles we're writing about play and recess, we're really trying to dig into this idea that it's not as valuable. And when you're in elementary school, I think in younger grades, pre-K, preschool, kindergarten even, we understand play is really important and that's how kids learn. But then they get into elementary school and it's stripped away, right? And they just
Mm.
get recess, or even play is a reward that they get instead of this really critical part of their day at school. So that's something that we're really trying to bring out here and highlight all the research that shows play is really valuable for kids, even on up through middle school. We wrote about that as well in this series we did, and just all the benefits that you can see when kids are given chance to play.
I think it's very interesting. We were looking at it in an earlier podcast that we've gotten to this point of schools have become so focused on academics, so focused on closing the achievement gap, whatever that means, that states are now passing laws that guarantee so much play time for students. So, for example, here in the state of Washington, where I'm at, they passed a law that every kid through elementary school must be guaranteed 30 minutes of recess, which even to me, 30 minutes seems very little. But it's interesting. There are other states that have guaranteed 20 minutes of recess. What impact are you seeing that? Are you seeing that in other nations? Is this a US thing in some of the research you do around just understanding play being an important part of childhood and growing up and what that does for brain development?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hadn't really thought about it internationally as we were
Mm,
writing these, but right now I'm doing a lot of work in Norway, and I am seeing just such a grasp by so many people I talk to that like play is the most important thing. So
mm,
coming back from Norway to here, I'm really rethinking a lot of the work that we're doing around play, because it seems here we have to convince people. And I know there's a
Yeah,
lot of competing
sure.
factors, right? There's state testing. I used to be a teacher. I understand how stressful it is. I'm a parent. I get it. I feel like sometimes we're working against ourselves because there's so many benefits to play. It may seem like you're giving something up so that you can focus on more academics, but actually we're working against our best interests if we're not
Mm,
giving kids that playtime because they benefit so much from it.
yeah. I want to dig into, yeah, I find it interesting. And it just is interesting, as you travel, how different nationalities, different cultures have a different way of the idea of play. And so it's one thing that I'm always fascinated about too when I travel, and just looking at the different cultural aspects of that inside of a school system for sure. You've recently done some research on guided play advice for parents, and we're going to link to this article. Such a great article that you wrote just about a year ago, June of last year. The title of it is Guided Play Benefits Kids, but what does that look like for parents? Can you talk a little bit about the article and maybe what is some advice that you give to parents around the importance in play as we're headed here into the middle of summer?
Yeah, and I want to preface this by saying, like I said, I have two young kids, so I promise I'm not just throwing out advice I find difficult because I know how annoying that is. So this article came to be after we had written these play pieces and getting into the nuances of this, and I saw this white paper that came out from a couple leading researchers around play that was really getting into guided play, which is tricky because if you think of play on a spectrum, which you may have talked over this at this point, you have free play
Yeah.
on one side and you have direct instruction on the other, and guided play is in the middle. And so I think I've always thought of guided play as a parent as, okay, now I need to plan this time with my kids and sit down with them and come up with materials. And we know guided play, there was a learning goal in mind, and I have to facilitate this. And honestly, it can feel daunting sometimes.
Mm,
And I was talking to Charlotte Ann Wright, who's at the Temple Infant and Child Lab, and she really helped me reframe the way that I'm thinking about guided play and the way that I think a lot of parents are, in that it doesn't have to be this, we're going to sit down and do this really planned out thing with resources we had to buy. It's just making little everyday experiences more meaningful.
mm,
That may look like if your kids are really proficient at building with regular blocks, you throw in some different shapes of blocks
mm,
and see what they can do there, which does involve maybe buying materials. So some other examples that don't involve that are searching for shapes or letters as you're going to the grocery store or on a bus, or I've been doing this with my 5-year-old, which is fun, like racing to match socks if you're doing laundry, and
mm,
just adding like a little bit more of a meaning to everyday activities. And honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea that like, is this guided play? But
Yeah.
trusting the experts, and I'm trying it. And I think that kind of reframe is necessary and helpful for parents.
I love that. I have a niece and nephew who are 5 and 7, and right now they're into playing I Spy. But again, it's one of those, I think that is almost a guided play practice. Like we're talking about colors and shapes and what do you see and how do you notice it? And can you describe as a hint, right? Like, give me a hint. Can you describe the color without giving me the color,
Right.
right? That's a guided play practice. But it's almost annoying at this point,
Yeah.
even being their uncle, like all they want to do is play I Spy. Like, oh my gosh, here we go again.
We need to come up with another game to
I know we need more games. So we need more games. This is starting to wear on mine. But I think that's a great example of one of those things where even in a grocery store, you can do things like looking at shapes and colors and how do you have some guided play in some of those moments in time that it doesn't have to be this highly structured thing that we set up with our kids as well.
Thank you for tuning in to Shifting Schools. Let's pause our discussion to spotlight Libra HQ, a breakthrough in using AI to deepen connections within organizations. Imagine an environment where every staff member feels truly seen and valued. This is the heart of Libra's mission. Libra transforms how leaders celebrate and recognize the personal and professional milestones of their team members. It's not just about reminders. Libra's AI dives deeper, offering insight into enhanced team cohesion and promote a culture where support and acknowledgement are paramount. Picture a school where every individual is acknowledged, from work achievements to personal victories, creating a culture of appreciation in just minutes a day. In these challenging times, where the demands on educators have never been higher, Libra offers a way for school leaders to lead with true empathy and compassion, ensuring every team member feels an integral part of their community's success. Discover how Libra can revolutionize your school's culture. For a demo, contact me at jeff@shiftingschools.com. Let's build a future where every educator and staff member feels connected and valued. And now, let's get back to our conversation.
Are there any other examples that you have maybe here in the summertime of getting kids outside, and what does guided play maybe look out as we're trying to get kids to interact with other students more or something like that?
Yes, I was constantly asking for examples, and some other ones they gave me were, this is more of a clear like learning goal, right? If you're trying to work on counting with a child, go draw a number line in chalk outside and have them jump from number to number. And I found, so I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. So maybe the 5-year-old is just working on counting and my 8-year-old is working on addition and subtraction, right?
Sure.
So it could work for all ages, or even building something outside, building a fort, right? That's all engineering and trying to get a sense of where am I safe? Like learning about your body and what you can do with your body. And all of that is really critical. I think also thinking about, I've been trying to do a little bit more risky play, which can be scary. But in this play research, I've been learning a lot about how risky play is really important. This is something I found in Norway a lot. I was touring childcare programs there, and kids were climbing trees and jumping off trees and standing on swings and sitting on top of tables doing board games. And I was the only American there, and I kept being like, fall, and no one else was batting an eye. I asked about this, and they were saying this is how they learn about their own limits and interpersonal relationships, and it's really important developmentally, which is what the resource I had read in America before I went to Norway, it's what it said. But seeing it was really powerful. So that's on my mind now that I'm back here in the States with my own kids is, okay, letting them outside. Is there something I can release a little bit? Because I know risky play is important, not like dangerous necessarily, but like maybe they are, climbing those trees or doing something that normally you'd be a little worried about, but maybe just give them a little space to explore there.
I love that. I think that is so powerful. I think it's more powerful than we can even think about, as we find ourselves in a society right now that is risk adverse, especially when it comes to children. And I even think back on my own childhood of climbing trees and building tree forts. And it's interesting. Some of the work I do is around generations and understanding where different generations are coming from. And being a Gen Xer, also known as a latchkey kid, we we spent a lot of time at home alone taking risks where there weren't not even good risks, I would say. I'm sure there's people that are listening to this being like, oh yeah, I took some risks that I probably shouldn't have taken, because there wasn't any parent supervision in many of those cases, versus what you're talking about is allowing kids to go climb tree. And there is somebody there that when it gets too risky to get off the little branch, you can stand on the big branch, but don't try to put all your weight on the little branch.
Right.
And you can teach those things while allowing kids to figure out what those boundaries are. It's one thing to jump off of 2 steps. It's another thing to jump off a second-story building, and having those conversations with you being there in a supportive way, but allowing kids to take the risk to figure out where that stuff is. Yeah. I think the other part for me is now I'm at an age where I'm scared to break a bone because I know it's going to take 7 months to heal. Where when you're a kid, if you break a bone, what is it, 2 weeks and your body heals itself better than it was. Like, it's just a different thing as well. I'd rather break a bone when I was little than I would any time now.
I know. I asked the Norwegian early ed teachers, I was like, surely you have injuries, right? Yeah. Kids are like careening off of trees and around corners on bikes and falling. And they even give kids little knives, like little hunting knives, to learn how to whittle wood. And she was like, no, we really don't. Like, they learn their limits. This idea of trusting kids and trusting them to learn their limits. And I'm sure there are nuances, and we all know our own kids and our own students, and there may be some differences or accommodations that need to take place. But I was just really struck by this overall idea of trust and kind of letting go a little bit as kids are playing. And it was definitely reframing for me.
Yeah, I love that. There was another school that I was working with where they had elementary kids, and they had them out there with hammers and nails and saws and knives. Yeah. And the parents were very concerned at first, saying, how are you making sure I'm keeping my kid safe? And how many injuries do you have? And hardly ever. Once in a while, they said they get more splinters than somebody's like cutting a finger with a knife or using a saw inappropriately. Like, they'll get splinters, and you can take splinters out, and you need to know how. Yeah. But they said it was incredible to watch these kids go out, and they're literally like hammering nails and sawing wood and like all these things that hardly ever would you find a parent handing an 8-year-old a saw and saying, here, go for it. Go see what you can do with a saw. Right. And yet they are. And I think the other thing is too, is just the human body is very durable, especially when you're young, that you can jump out of trees and fall out of trees. And even my 5-year-old niece, she fell off the back of a chair the other day and bonked her head, and she was more embarrassed. I'm just like, oh, that had to hurt. She was more embarrassed that she fell than it was hurtful. And I'm thinking, if I'd have done that at 47, you'd be taking me to the hospital. Right. Yeah. It's this different mindset, but such a good one to remember for sure.
Yeah. It was really instructional and just fascinating to see this whole culture around that belief.
I love that. Mackin Educational Resources has once again partnered with us for our summer mini-series. Thank you to Mackin for continuing to be a partner of the Shifting Schools community. Their new product, Mackin Vision, is the future of library management. Created with your students' need at the forefront, Mackin Vision offers a user-friendly interface that simplifies navigation, making it easy for students to find what they need. This state-of-the-art system includes features like intuitive browsing, secure multi-level access, multimedia searching, and whole school rostering. Additionally, it has a teacher library portal, aggregated dashboard, live analytics, and centralized reporting. Mackin Vision is designed to streamline your school's library operations. Learn more about how Mackin Vision can benefit your school at mackin.com/MackinVision. Schedule your free demonstration and experience the future today. What's one piece of advice you have for listeners looking to better embed play in their own day-to-day lives? We know that the research shows with students, as we've been talking about, but for all of us to have a playful mindset around just introducing play into our own lives, what's one piece of advice that maybe you have for listeners looking to better embed play in our own daily lives?
Good question. First of all, I know play will look different for everyone. Something I've kept in mind is something actually 2 teachers said to me during a story I was writing about the benefits of play at all ages. And it was this idea that it might feel overwhelming to start, but just identify one activity in your day you can replace with something playful. Even if it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just find a more playful way to do something, or something you can swap out so that you're adding in this more playfulness. So it's a lot easier to imagine in a classroom, right? One teacher said, I was having kids come in and do desk work right when they got into my
Yeah.
classroom. And now they come in and they go and play. And it's just free play in the beginning of the day. That might feel overwhelming. So maybe you do it at a different time or you do it one day a week. But I like that mentality of it doesn't have to be this big overwhelming thing. Just think, what's one thing I can start adding into my routine or swap out so that I'm getting a little bit more play in there.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah. I like that idea, especially I think early in the day. I don't think we give that a lot of that. The bell rings and we feel like we've got to get to work.
Right.
And could kids use a little time of being able to transition from morning time getting to school and all of the stress that we have as families trying to get to school. And then before you're actually settling to do your work, a little structured, unstructured playtime in the classroom might not be a bad thing.
Yeah. And the thought that when kids are playing, like they are learning things that can be really hard to teach in a formal lesson. They are getting learning time. It's just different. It just looks different.
I love that. We will make sure that we link to everything that you've written over there. Especially, I love this again, about a year ago, you wrote guided play benefits kids, but does this look like for parents? Great article. Highly recommend it for educators, and educators can send it out to other parents that they know. Just some real practical guides in there on the power of play, especially here in the summertime. Again, when we're looking for ways of how are we supporting kids throughout the summer, this idea of guided play, I think, is a powerful way. And it's to our what we've been talking about here. It's small moments. Like, how do you find those small moments? It doesn't need to be this big thing. You don't need to go to your students and say, oh, now we're having guided play time.
Yeah.
But what are these small moments that we can fit in? And every once in a while, add a little risk to that as well. Yeah. So that's great. Jackie, if people want to reach out to you to learn more or follow your work, what is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter still. I'm sticking around, which is at Jackie Mater. You can also email me at my work email. I'm sure you'll share it, but mater@hechingerreport.org.
Awesome. And we will link to that. We'll link to your profile over at the Hechinger Report too, where you can see everything that Jackie has written. So Jackie, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your expertise, and continue doing the research and reporting on the power of play in young people and for us of all ages.
Thanks so much. It was great being here.